Okay, well, this is my Kioti CX2510 Compact Tractor. This is kind of my long-awaited review of this unit. There's so much to cover on it that every time I try to do a review, I forget something, and I really want to give as much information as I can, so then anybody that's interested in this brand and this particular model, that you have some information to go off before deciding whether or not you want to have one. So to start, one of the first things you're probably wondering is why Kioti and why the CX2510 hydrostat. There's no really particular reason why I chose this brand. I was in the market for either a subcompact or compact size tractor, but I wasn't really pursuing buying one. As you can see, I have a few garden tractors in here. For the last 15 years, I have always bought older garden tractors and tinkered with them and, you know, used them to move snow and dirt and mow and whatever. When I bought this about 2 or so years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, I was working a job that was 60 to 80 hours a week, and when I was getting home at night, it was too dark for me to use a garden tractor to move snow, and none of them really have lights. But even if they did, we'd gotten so much snow that they were struggling, and I had a lot of driveway to move snow in. So I thought, how cool would it be to have a bigger tractor to move snow with? And I was at a truck stop at work over lunch, and across the street there was a dealership that had a whole line of Kiotis out front. I thought they were Kubotas at first. I really didn't know much about Kioti. I went over there to look at them. A salesman came out, and they had them lined up from smallest to the biggest model they had in stock. This was actually the second smallest. They had a CS series Kioti as their smallest, and I'm not kidding you, that thing didn't seem much bigger than that right there. It definitely was, but this model seemed much bigger than the CS series model that they had, and I had no interest in the subcompact one, the small one they had. This one had a little bit more horsepower, I think a lot more lifting power with the loader, and obviously the rear tires are bigger. In fact, I think on the CS model, the rear tire on that one wasn't much bigger than the front tire on this one. And the model they had above this one was huge compared to this one, and it was like another 10,000 or something. So this is why I settled on this. I paid $15,800 for it, and that included the loader. The quick hitch I put on there myself. That was $200 from a farm store. Basically what you're looking at though is pretty much what came with the tractor. They do have this kind of brush guard deal on the front, which is cool. But so that's why I have this model. I do believe that this same model is now around 20,000 new with the loader. So I kind of got lucky on the price because I bought it in spring of 21, and I think that was before COVID had caused a bunch of increases in price on pretty much every company. All their products have went up because of COVID, I believe, but paying just under $16,000 for this seemed like a pretty good deal. And Kioti had awesome financing. It was $0 down and next to nothing for interest. So every payment I make on this machine is practically all principal, which is awesome. But anyways, so since I've had this for about 2.5 years, it has just about 93 hours on it. And I am willing to guess 80% of those hours is using the loader. And that's the number one thing I love about this tractor, is the loader. I've always wanted a loader. In fact, there was a time where I wanted to buy a garden tractor that had a loader on it, and I'm glad I didn't. But the loader's awesome. I mean, even digging, which I have now learned is these aren't really built to dig a lot. One thing I always remind myself with these is that this is not a payloader, it's not a skid loader, and it's not a bulldozer. And I have done some really heavy digging with this that I probably shouldn't have, and I'm paying the price now by wearing out a bunch of pins, and I'll get to that. But the loader is just fantastic. It makes life so much easier. This thing will move snow like crazy. I mean, just between the sheer weight of this thing, the fact that it's four-wheel drive, the fact that you can lock the rear differential, as well as add weight to the back. In the wintertime when I'm plowing snow, I usually have my 3-point blade on the back, and it just, nothing stops you. It just keeps going. So you can plow huge amounts of snow with it, or push it, I mean, and obviously lift it up out of the way and then dump it out of your way. And to me, I think the snow removal aspect, if you live in the north, this is one of the greatest things this tractor has going for it, is that it's great for snow. Not long after buying this, I had, it's probably hard to see now, I went to an auction and I bought a bunch of these quick attach skid plates. I think I bought 2 of them, and then I got a third one that had, it was set up to hook up a trailer receiver hitch into, so you can move trailers with it. But I took one of these plates, and I have some connections with people, found a pair of used forklift forks, and made my own set of forks. And that's the second most useful thing I've done with this tractor, is moving things around with the forks. I've had a million people ask me about how capable this loader is, and it varies on what you're doing. I think I told somebody in the comments once that this thing will move what you think it won't, or it'll lift what you think it won't, and it won't lift what you think it will. And I know that sounds weird, but it's true. It really depends on how far out the weight of your load is, how high you're lifting it, what you have for counterweight in the back. There's just a bunch of things going on. One thing, if you buy one of these tractors exactly how this one is, the first thing you're gonna notice, that first scoop of dirt you get in this bucket. I mean, a good scoop of dirt, where this is tilted back and you have dirt kind of sticking out of the bucket, and some of it falls off, and what's remaining in the bucket of full of dirt, you're going to be surprised that these rear tires are going to want to come off the ground. And I think that kind of stuns a lot of people. You have to have counterweight on the back of this tractor, otherwise lifting buckets of dirt is going to bring your rear tires off the ground. You're going to lose traction. Your tires are going to start ripping up your yard. So you're going to need weight on the back. So that's kind of something you got to think about when you're buying one of these. You spend $16,000, or now it's probably about $20,000, and it's almost going to be kind of useless until you get some weight on the back. You don't have to have a quick hitch, but you're going to have to buy some sort of implement that's heavy enough You know, whether it's a weight box or a rear blade or a rear mower or tiller, something with good weight to it that sticks out far enough that it just gives you really good ballast. In the manual as well as online, you can find how much weight this is rated to lift. And I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I believe at the pin right here, all the way up in the air, I think it's like just a tad over 1,000 pounds it's rated to lift. And so obviously any weight in front of these pins is gonna move your center of gravity, and that changes everything. When I have my forks on here, you know, lifting up a pallet of whatever, that weight is out farther, so the amount of weight it'll lift gets less and less the farther out it is. So that's one thing to think about. I have moved an 8x10 shed with this, and I've tried to pick up a half disassembled riding mower, and then it wouldn't lift the riding mower. It'd move a whole shed almost, but wouldn't lift a riding mower that high in the air. I mean, it's iffy when it comes to weight distribution and center of gravity and all that. So something to think about. There's many times I've been using this and I thought I wish I had gone one model bigger, just so it would lift a little bit more weight. One thing about the hydraulics on this unit is that, and I don't know a lot about hydraulics, but I know that there's safety stuff in the hydraulic system where I'm assuming it goes off of pressure. So if you lift something that's really heavy, or you're trying to lift it, and the hydraulic system is under a certain amount of pressure, it won't let you attempt to lift it. It will like disengage the hydraulic system, and it will not feed any hydraulic fluid into the cylinder. I don't know what that's called. I don't know what the part is, but it's weird because back in the day I would use old skid loaders that didn't have that safety feature. You know, they'd be rated for say 1 ton, 2,000 pounds. But then you would lift up something that was 3,000 pounds and totally destroy the, you know, hydraulic pump, and you'd bend the rams and everything. But at least it would let you do it at your discretion. This one, if it feels like it's too heavy or it's under too much pressure, like when I tried digging up tree roots and stuff using the bucket, it oftentimes will kick out its ability to keep trying because it knows it's too much. Whereas these old skid loaders I used to use, you know, you could just completely destroy your machine trying to get something out. It would just keep trying. So that safety feature is a little weird, and I know if it wasn't there, then people would be, you know, complaining to Kioti, hey, I destroyed my hydraulic pump, because it, you know, that's why they put this stuff in here. It's to, you know, prolong the life of your parts in your machine, and I get it. The 3-point can actually lift more weight than the loader can, and that's obvious because the center of gravity, it's much closer to the machine, and I think it's like 1,300 pounds this thing can lift. It's actually probably more than that. I'm probably wrong, but it can lift a lot of weight back here. So obviously the loader's, you know, my favorite thing about this tractor, and I use that the most. I haven't given this tractor a fair shot at anything else other than using the loader. I do have my 3-point blade on the back that I use, and that's cool too. But I don't have a mower, whether it be, you know, a mid PTO mower, rear PTO mower, you know, brush hogs, tillers, you know, box blades. There's a lot of attachments for this tractor that would make it so much cooler, but I don't have them yet. And so I haven't really used this tractor to its maximum capabilities with attachments yet. One thing to think about when you're buying something like this, you know the old expression, there's no such thing as a free puppy. You know, after you get a free puppy, you got dog food, the dog bowl, you know, collar, leash, dog house, blah, blah, blah. It goes on. You know, it's expensive. You got to feed it the rest of its life. Well, when you pay, say, $20,000 for one of these new, you also have to consider what are the attachments going to cost to use this machine to its, you know, maximum capabilities. I didn't realize how expensive attachments were. I mean, tillers are a couple thousand, some mowers are a couple thousand. There's a million attachments you can get for these, which is awesome. But just buying up 5 attachments could nearly cost half of what this machine did. I mean, it's expensive. I kind of, when I first bought this, I really wanted to get a rear backhoe for it right away, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. But when you buy a machine, on my loan for this, the tractor and the loader were separate, even though, you know, the loader was already on it when I bought it. So I know you can add attachments from Kioti to your tractor package when you're buying it new. And so if you want other attachments, I would consider adding that into your loan when you buy it, instead of going back later and doing it. And then that way your attachments are included in your good rate for financing. So that being said, that's what I love about this tractor, is that the loader is fantastic, and it has a lot of different attachments you can use for it. As far as things that kind of broke on this right away, earlier I mentioned that you need to be careful digging with this, and the reason I say that is because I wore out already at 93 hours. I wore out a bunch of these pins. And this stuff is all loose now. This whole bucket, it's a lot easier to tell when it's up in the air, but this whole bucket has so much play in it that it's almost hard to like carefully smooth ground, because the bucket moves all over when you're trying to do it. I mean, just look how loose that is. I've been around heavy equipment my whole life. Everything from skid loaders to bulldozers to dump trucks, material handlers, tractors, obviously, all kinds of different stuff. I know you have to grease this stuff a lot. I just didn't realize how much you really have to grease this loader. And I have just a hand greaser. Back to what I said earlier about thinking about the cost of other things when buying one of these tractors, I would definitely invest in a battery operated grease gun, because you're gonna, if you have a hand operated one, you get lazy like I do, and you don't want to grease it every single time you're using it, which I think you should, because it's like the grease, just once the grease kind of runs out, these pins wear down fast. It was not loose like that when I first bought it. When I first bought it, this bucket was so tight, this whole loader was just perfect. I mean, if you left it in this position and stepped on it, it wouldn't move an inch. And this whole kind of assembly up here flexes now just because of how loose it's gotten. And it rattles when you're driving it, and that drives me nuts. I just don't feel like a machine with only under 100 hours should be that worn down already. And that, I'm gonna put all that blame on me for not greasing it enough If I could go back, I would grease this loader every single day. And I know that sounds like too much, but when I got a quote for a backhoe after I bought this tractor, and it was $7,300 for the backhoe, and then the mount underneath, and then the hydraulic hose kit. And I had read online in a review that a guy was mentioning how only after like 20 or 30 hours of using his backhoe, the pins were loose, and he greased it a ton. In reading some other things about Coyotes, it seems like a common problem is the pins wear down really fast. This is, I believe, out of Korea, I think. It is a Daedong, I think is the name. I can't remember where I saw that on here. Daedong. But I think it's manufactured overseas, and then I believe this was assembled in the Carolinas, either north or south. So who knows what grade and quality of steel they are using overseas. You know, steel quality has been an issue from Asia for a long time. It's always been a thing people have known about. I believe in the United States we have much stricter and higher quality steel when it's used in manufacturing practices. But anyway, so the pins, all the hydraulic system, every pivot point, that stuff has to be taken care of really well. So just keep that in mind. So some of the other things that kind of failed on this right away, and not all of this is Coyote's fault. The 3-point, you got to tighten all this stuff down. When you adjust your 3-point to where you want it, you know, they have these nuts that you know, tighten them down, and it makes sure that all your adjustment points don't move. I'm terrible about that. I let these things get loose all the time, and when I was moving snow, my 3-point moved over, and I lifted it, and it ended up bending the hood around my PTO shaft, if you want to call it that. Hood, skirt, I don't know, but I bent that. That's my fault. But you do have to tighten this whole system down so it's not all loosey-goose like that. Otherwise you can bend that. I had issues with the throttle cable, or the throttle, last winter. Now obviously when it gets 40 below, things get frozen and stuck because they're cold. I forced this throttle to go up in RPM, and it messed something up in there. Probably can't see it without the hood being open, but I had kind of readjusted it a little bit so then the throttle works better, but it doesn't. It's supposed to idle at 600 RPM when it's up to temperature. Right now my unit idles at 900 or 1000 RPM. So I need to adjust this more to make sure it's idling down to where it should be. And that's not necessarily a bad product or anything. That, you know, cold weather will destroy almost anything. So I did have an O-ring blowout on one of these. I can't remember which one it was. I was lifting a homemade doghouse for a neighbor, and it was a heavy doghouse. I bet it was almost to the capacity of this thing. And it blew an O-ring out, and it sprayed hot hydraulic oil all over me. It was not fun. The dealership gave me a free O-ring, and I put it in myself, so no big deal. When I bought it, the salesman did tell me, he said that this high-low selector is gonna be sticky. He said it's gonna not always want to go into gear, and it's better, a lot better now, but when I first got this, it would barely move. I mean, it was tough. now it, you know, it moves pretty well. So that's another thing to consider. I did have a bolt. These bolts like to work their way loose. Yeah, this one here is loose. It felt, the bolt for this fell out and I lost it, and then this thing started spinning around, and I found a bolt that I had and I put it in there, and you got to make sure those are tightened down. One day I was using this out in my driveway and I put the bucket down on the ground, went to lunch, came back, and it wouldn't start. Being how new this tractor is, obviously it's going to have a million safety switches and stuff on it, and it does. You have to be in the seat. I don't think you have to have the seat belt buckled. Not sure, I've never even unbuckled it. It's always been buckled in anyways, but you have to be in the seat. You have to push the clutch pedal in, the left pedal here. It has to be in neutral. PTO has to be off. The park brake has to be on before it will even turn over. So when I came back from lunch one day, everything was fine. All the safety switches were, you know, depressed and the way they're supposed to be, but it would not turn over at all. So I thought it was the battery, so I charged the battery, and the battery was fine. I couldn't even move the thing into my garage because the bucket was into the ground, so I couldn't push it. So I called the dealership. They knew exactly what it was. They came out. They took this whole seat off, and underneath the seat, underneath of this plate here, was a little box. It looked, he called it an expensive relay, but it was really just a little black box that had a bunch of electrical components in it. And he said they fail in this model at about 50 hours. The CX2510 hydrostat. They fail for some reason, and Kioti knows about it. He came out, took all that off, put in the new replacement part, put it all back together, and it's never had an issue since. It's always started. You just have to make sure that all your checklist items are, like sometimes when I get off of this, I'll bump it just past neutral and it won't start, and then I'll freak out and be like, oh man, what do I do now? Well, it's because I bumped this forward a little bit. You gotta make sure that's in neutral, and I've always had older equipment, so I've never had to deal with that stuff, so it's kind of a pain, but all new machines are gonna be like that. That's just the world we live in now. So yeah, basically, you know, the things that have failed of either, some of it's quality issues, some of it's bad luck. I mean, it's really up to you whether or not it's worth it to make payments on something that could be expensive at times. So this thing measures 13 feet from the end of that bucket all the way to the end of the quick hitch. And I'm just going to call it 50 inches wide because that's how wide the bucket is. And this thing has a way of causing optical illusions. Sometimes when I look at this, it looks like a big tractor. I'm like, wow, this thing's big. Other days I look at it and I'm like, this thing's small. It's really odd. It like plays with your mind. Sometimes it looks like it's bigger than it is, and sometimes it's not. It's just, it is what it is. I think the best thing for anyone to do really is to look at them in person at a dealership to really gauge how big of a unit you want. Now these companies always try to keep costs low, so then people are more interested in buying them new. And so one thing that I don't like about this is that they don't have I call them auxiliary. I'm sure there's another name for it. But they don't have extra hydraulics ran to the front of the loader, so then you can run, say, a grapple attachment on your bucket. So you have the normal function of the bucket, and then you have another hydraulic function to close the grapples on your bucket, or to have, say, a loader mounted snowblower or a sweeper, power sweeper, you know, hydraulic sweeper. It doesn't have that on there. You have to buy that separate, and I think the kit's like almost $1,000 really for just hoses, fittings, and then a button or a hydraulic control that goes somewhere. Same with the back. It doesn't have one back there. When I got my quote on my backhoe, it was, I think, $800 or $900 just for the rear hydraulic hoses. And obviously that one you can, you know, plug into a backhoe, log splitter, you know, any hydraulic attachments on the back, you know, you'd be able to plug into that, but it's not on the back and it ain't on the front. So that's another $2,000 worth of hydraulic parts that you have to buy if you want to have, you know, extra hydraulic functions. And if they put them on there, then they'd have to up the price of their tractors when they're new, you know, and then it would deter people from... The more expensive it seems when you buy it, you know, at first, the less likely people are going to be able to buy them, you know. So, a couple other things I do like about this. Goodyear tires, that's cool. That's an American tire brand. I don't know if they were, I would think they were made in the United States. I guess I've never even... Made in USA, yeah. So that's cool. Good tires. It does have an interstate battery in it. I don't know if they come standard with that or if that was just my dealership using interstate in these tractors themselves. I don't know, but it's the best battery I've ever had. I have left this thing on somebody's acreage once in an old barn all winter, and I went out there mid-February. It was freezing. I ran the glow plugs one time and it fired up. That battery sat for months and it never ran. It just sat in the cold. And it not only had enough power to cycle the glow plugs, but then it started. So it has an awesome battery in it, has American-made tires. Obviously, I don't think I said this yet, but it has the quick attach front on here. So really, any skid loader attachments work with this, which is great. Because I noticed on some of the, I believe John Deere has their own style of attaching buckets on the front of their compact tractors. I think you can get an adapter to go from John Deere's hookups to a quick attach, but that's just an extra part you have to buy if you want to buy a John Deere. This one just comes like this, so if you see plates like these, you can buy them up and you know that it's going to hook right up. And so I like things that are universal. Saves you a lot of headaches. The loader is a quick detach and attach. I've never done it before, mostly because I'm always using the loader, so I have no reason to. But there's a lot to it. I mean, there's a lot with this tractor I haven't done yet. I've never used the PTO, the rear PTO. I don't have any attachments to use that function with, so I've never tried it. But if I did have a bunch of extra attachments for this, it would give me a whole lot more to do with it. I'm kind of at a point right now where in the, you know, in summertime and early fall, I'm not really doing a lot with it, and so it sits a lot, and then it makes you wonder if it's worth making payments every month on. But as soon as winter hits and the snow starts falling, then it's worth it. Another thing you need to consider too is how much land you have. What are you using it for? Because my yard is small. It's only 50 by 150, and I have done so much with this on my property that now I'm kind of running out of things to do. So what's left really is nothing that my garden tractors can't handle, you know. So my YouTube channel is, the name of my channel is something that doesn't exist yet, Skywatcher Ranch. I haven't found my ranch yet, my property, you know. If I had a couple acres out in the countryside, you know, that needed trees moved, chopped down, and you know, material moved, and then this thing would get used a lot more, you know. So there's actually kind of a, like, if you buy a goldfish, it will only grow as big as the environment that it's in. So if you put it in a little bowl, it's always going to be a small little fish. But if you put a goldfish in a pond, it'll grow huge. And so really your equipment should only be as, you know, if you want, it should only be as big as what you need it for. So my size property, garden tractors are perfect. I can't even turn this thing around in my backyard hardly anymore because I'm running out of room after building a fence and, you know, having stuff all over the place. It's tight in there, and it's kind of a pain, to be honest with you. But part of the reason I bought it is because someday I do want to buy some property that's bigger than what I have now, and this will be awesome when that time comes. So, my opinion, if you ask me right now, should I buy a Kioti CX2510? I wouldn't answer yes or no. That is completely up to you. But no matter what, all these machines like Kubota, Mahindra, Kioti, Bobcat, I notice a lot of them are almost completely similar, but they just have different names on them. Like I see Bobcats and Kubotas and all kinds of them that they use the same components. I know this was made in Asia, in either Korea or China or wherever. These, you know, they use these same parts on different brand tractors. They use the same dashes, same exact dashes, same throttle cables, same steering wheel components, and you know, it's all pretty much kind of the same. So it's really whatever is the best deal for you. You know, if you're loyal to certain brands, then, you know, whatever. I know a lot of people that no matter what John Deere puts out, they buy John Deere stuff. That's just the way they are. It doesn't matter if it was a bad product. They would still buy it because their dad and their granddad and their great-granddad have been buying John Deere for the last 100 years, and that's the way they are. But so I will definitely do more videos on this unit, more information about it. I have ADD really bad, so I can't really focus very well on what I'm covering. I try to write all this information down in this notebook. I have pages and pages of information about this tractor that I've wanted to share on YouTube that I don't have the charisma to say it all in one video because I get sidetracked, but it ain't a bad unit. So, well, if you have any questions, make sure to let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.